Verses 43 to 48. In these verses we have Christ's coming into Galilee, v. 43. Though he was as welcome among the Samaritans as he could be anywhere, and had better success, yet after 2 days he left them, not so much because they were Samaritans, and he would not confirm those in their prejudices against him who said, "He is a Samaritan," ch. 848, but because he must preach to other cities, Lu. 4:43. He went into Galilee, for there he spent much of his time. Now see here. Whither Christ went, into Galilee, into the country of Galilee, but not to Nazareth, which was strictly his own country. He went among the villages, but declined going to Nazareth, the head city, for a reason here given, which Jesus himself testified, who knew the temper of his countrymen, the hearts of all men, and the experiences of all prophets, and it is this, that a prophet has no honor in his own country. Prophets ought to have honor, because God has put honor upon them and we do or may receive benefit by them. The honor due to the Lord's prophets has very often been denied them, and contempt put upon them. This due honor is more frequently denied them in their own country, see Lu. 4:24, MT 1357. Not that it is universally true, no rule but has some exceptions, but it holds for the most part. Joseph, when he began to be a prophet, was most hated by his brethren, David was disdained by his brother, 1 Sa 17:28, Jeremiah was maligned by the men of Anathoth, Jah 11:21, Paul by his countrymen the Jews, and Christ's near kinsmen spoke most slightly of him, ch. 7:5. Men's pride and envy make them scorn to be instructed by those who once were their school fellows and playfellows. Desire of novelty, and of that which is far-fetched and dear-bought, and seems to drop out of the sky to them, makes them despise those persons and things which they have been long used to and know the rise of. It is a great discouragement to a minister to go among a people who have no value for him or his labors. Christ would not go to Nazareth, because he knew how little respect he should have there. It is just with God to deny his gospel to those that despise the ministers of it. They that mock the messengers forfeit the benefit of the message. MT 21:35, 41. What entertainment he met with among the Galileans in the country, v. 45. They received him, bade him welcome, and cheerfully attended on his doctrine. Christ and his gospel are not sent in vain. If they have not honor with some, they shall have with others. Now the reason given why these Galileans were so ready to receive Christ is because they had seen the miracles he did at Jerusalem, v. 45. Observe. They went up to Jerusalem at the feast of the Passover. The Galileans lay very remote from Jerusalem, and their way thither lay through the country of the Samaritans, which was troublesome for a Jew to pass through, worse than Bacchus Valley of old, yet, in obedience to God's command, they went up to the feast, and there they became acquainted with Christ. Note, they that are diligent and constant in attending on public ordinances some time or other meet with more spiritual benefit than they expect. At Jerusalem they saw Christ's miracles, which recommended him and his doctrine very much to their faith and affections. The miracles were wrought for the benefit of those at Jerusalem, yet the Galileans who were accidentally there got more advantage by them than they did for whom they were chiefly designed. Thus the word preached to a mixed multitude may perhaps edify occasional hearers more than the constant auditory. What city he went to? When he would go to a city, he chose to go to Cana of Galilee, where he had made the water wine, v. 46, thither he went, to see if there were any good fruits of that miracle remaining, and, if there were, to confirm their faith, and water what he had planted. The evangelist mentions this miracle here to teach us to keep in remembrance what we have seen of the works of Christ. His curing the nobleman's son that was sick of a fever. This story is not recorded by any other of the evangelists, it comes in MT 4:23. Who the petitioner was, and who the patient. The petitioner was a nobleman, the patient was his son, there was a certain nobleman. Regulus, so the Latin, a little king, so called, either for the largeness of his estate, or the extent of his power, or the royalties that belonged to his manor. Some understand it as denoting his preferment he was a courtier in some office about the king, others as denoting his party he was an Herodian, a royalist, a prerogative man, one that espoused the interests of the Herods, father and son. Perhaps it was Chusa, Herod's steward, Lu 8:3, or Manaen, Herod's foster brother, Acts 13:1. There were saints in Caesar's household. The father a nobleman, and yet the son sick. For dignities and titles of honor will be no security to persons and families from the assaults of sickness and death. It was 15 miles from Capernaum where this nobleman lived to Cana, where Christ now was, yet this affliction in his family sent him so far to Christ. How the petitioner made his application to the physician. Having heard that Jesus was come out of Judea to Galilee, and finding that he did not come towards Capernaum, but turned off towards the other side of the country, he went to him himself, and besought him to come and heal his son. v. 47. See here his tender affection to his son, that when he was sick he would spare no pains to get help for him. His great respect to our Lord Jesus, that he would come himself to wait upon him, when he might have sent a servant, and that he besought him, when, as a man in authority, some would think he might have ordered his attendance. The greatest men, when they come to God, must become beggars, and so sub forma pauperis as paupers. As to the errand he came upon, we may observe a mixture in his faith. There was sincerity in it. He did believe that Christ could heal his son, though his disease was dangerous. It is probable he had physicians to him, who had given him over, but he believed that Christ could cure him when the case seemed deplorable. Yet there was infirmity in his faith. He believed that Christ could heal his son, but, as it should seem, he thought he could not heal him at a distance, and therefore he besought him that he would come down and heal him, expecting, as Naaman did, that he would come and strike his hand over the patient, as if he could not cure him but by a physical contact. Thus we are apt to limit the Holy One of Israel, and to stint him to our forms. The centurion, a Gentile, a soldier, was so strong in faith as to say, Lord, I am not worthy that thou shouldest come under my roof. Mt 8:8. This nobleman, a Jew, must have Christ to come down, though it was a good day's journey, and despairs of a cure unless he come down, as if he must teach Christ how to work. We are encouraged to pray, but we are not allowed to prescribe, Lord, heal me, but, whether with a word or a touch, thy will be done. The gentle rebuke he met with in this address, v. 48. Jesus said to him, I see how it is, except you see signs and wonders, you will not believe, as the Samaritans did, though they saw no signs and wonders, and therefore I must work miracles among you. Though he was a nobleman, and now in grief about his son, and had shown great respect to Christ in coming so far to him, yet Christ gives him a reproof. Men's dignity in the world shall not exempt them from the rebukes of the word or providence, for Christ reproves not after the hearing of his ears, but with equity. Isa 11:3, 4. Observe, Christ first shows him his sin and weakness, to prepare him for mercy, and then grants his request. Those whom Christ intends to honor with his favors he first humbles with his frowns. The Comforter shall first convince. Herod longed to see some miracle, Lu 23:8, and this courtier was of the same mind, and the generality of the people too. Now that which is blamed is that, whereas they had heard by credible and incontestable report of the miracles he had wrought in other places, they would not believe except they saw them with their own eyes. Lu 4:23. They must be honored, and they must be humored, or they will not be convinced. Their country must be graced, and their curiosity gratified, with signs and wonders, or else, though the doctrine of Christ be sufficiently proved by miracles wrought elsewhere, they will not believe. Like Thomas, they will yield to no method of conviction but what they shall prescribe. That, whereas they had seen divers miracles, the evidence of which they could not gainsay, but which sufficiently proved Christ to be a teacher come from God, and should now have applied themselves to him for instruction in his doctrine, which by its native excellency would have gently led them on, in believing, to a spiritual perfection, instead of this they would go no further in believing than they were driven by signs and wonders. The spiritual power of the word did not affect them, did not attract them, but only the sensible power of miracles, which were for those who believe not, while prophesying was for those that believe. 1 Cor 14:22. Those that admire miracles only, and despise prophesying, rank themselves with unbelievers.